While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears, and when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Hey, I'm Jamie East, and today's episode of the Smart 7 in association with Metro is supported by our friends at IG. Now, if you're someone who juggles money across multiple accounts, an ISA here, a GIA there, maybe a trading account you set up on the side, you'll know how frustrating managing it all can feel. Well, IG's just launched a brand new app that fixes exactly that. With IG's unified wallet, you can fund across all your accounts from one place, see your total portfolio at a glance, and move between investing, trading, and more, all without the hassle of logging into multiple accounts. One app, every product. And on top of that, IG charges no annual fees and zero commission on stock, shares and ETFs, so more of your money stays invested rather than being chipped away at by the platform that's supposed to be helping it grow. IG's the investment platform that backs you. Download the app and get started. IG Trade. Invest. Progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply. It's Saturday 8th of August, I'm Jamie East, and this was a week that saw PM Andy Burnham under pressure over prisoners, a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz inch closer, a plagiarism scandal at Cambridge, and tributes to a much-loved comedian. Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news. Prime Minister Andy Burnham had a busy weekend, turning up in Manchester on Saturday to congratulate the new Mayor of Greater Manchester, Bev Craig, who steps into Burnham's shoes following his move to Downing Street. Craig comfortably won for Labour with almost twice as many votes as Reform candidate Cian Astley. Andy was happy to hand over the torch.
You know that 3% average growth we had over 10 years? Well, Bev, you're just going to have to go. You're going to have to go. Am I right? Building more homes that people can truly afford, bringing rail into the B network. All of these things now become possible.
Bev Craig has been a member of Manchester City Council since 2011 and took over in 2021, becoming the first female leader and the first openly gay leader of the council. She says that she's taking over a city in good shape and the focus will be on continuity and, of course, the cost of living.
Actually, people don't want someone to come in and rip up some of the things that are working in this place. They want somebody to build on it, get stuff done, but do it in a way that brings people together and not divide them.
Last week's migrant surge from Morocco into the Spanish territory of Ceuta sparked concern across European capitals as the issue of illegal migration reappears on the agenda. Then on Monday, a High Court judge ordered the Home Office to return an alleged victim of trafficking to the UK who had been deported to France under the one-in, one-out scheme, raising questions about the legality of the process. Prime Minister Andy Burnham says he's focused on getting control of the UK's borders, and he says that requires a firm but fair approach.
We're just going to be relentless. People want to see this issue addressed, but we also need to build a system that offers safe routes for people as well, because that also takes away the selling point of the gangs.
Tory shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp says that he's unconvinced that there's any merit to the existing deal with France.
The French gendarmes that we are paying for just stood there and did literally nothing while about 100 illegal immigrants climbed onto a boat in knee-deep water. So all that is protecting our country's borders is rough seas in the English Channel.
While Labour under Andy Burnham has seen its polling perk up, Reform remains a very real threat when it comes to the next general election. The far-right vote seems to have been split, with former Reform member Rupert Lowe's new party called Restore picking up some of Reform's vote in recent by-elections. With Reform leader Nigel Farage still battling Count Binface in Clacton, you would think that the offer of an olive branch in the form of a voting pact between Reform and Restore would be good news for Nigel. However, an offer made on Sunday by Lowe seems to have sparked a fresh disagreement between the two sides, with Nigel resorting to personal attacks on Monday, describing Lowe as screaming and threatening colleagues when he was in Reform.
That he was sort of perhaps putting out this gesture, saying, look, I'm the good guy, Nigel's the bad guy. Well, that's not the case. I am prepared to do things and make sacrifices if I believe it's in the national interest.
We've become used to some extreme candidates emerging in British politics with the rise of reform and their rush to appoint candidates, resulting in some with questionable pasts slipping through the vetting process. However, it's quite a surprise when the Tory party is in the headlines in connection with a former neo-Nazi. On Wednesday, Joshua Bonehill-Payne withdrew his candidacy from next year's local elections. After it emerged, he'd been convicted of harassing a Jewish MP in 2015 and spent 3 years in jail. Badenoch says his decision to withdraw was the correct one.
This is a man who was talking about how in his late teens and early 20s he was radicalised. He became a racist and an anti-Semite. And he is training, certified by the Home Office, training people.
However, she sparked a new storm of protest when she appointed him instead to a new role as an advisor to her party's Culture and Integration Commission, where he will focus on how young men become radicalised. The person he abused, now Baroness Berger, had a different view.
There's a big difference between going back into society and teaching others possibly about what you did and why it was wrong, to making the leap to standing for public office. I think there's a massive distinction there.
New Prime Minister Andy Burnham may be on holiday after only 2 weeks in the role, but Downing Street says he's still in contact and is even holding meetings while he takes a break with his family. That might not go down too well with the Burnhams, but the new government has kept up the pace of announcements and new policies this week. Thursday saw new Health Secretary Yvette Cooper announce a significant change in the government's approach to mental health, with a new network of over 100 NHS walk-in centres, which are intended to be available by 2029.
This is a fundamental redesign of the way we deliver mental health services, the biggest for a generation, because we know that we've got increasing challenges around mental health and also huge long waiting list, people not getting the support they need.
Meanwhile, new Foreign Secretary Ed Miliband has been on the road meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington as the US waits for negotiations between Iran and Oman to conclude, which could see the Strait of Hormuz reopen. Ed was keen to pledge support for whatever it takes to get the Middle East crisis to a conclusion.
Well, the number one priority for this government is to tackle the cost of living crisis that people are facing. And my job as Foreign Secretary, most immediately, is to work with our closest ally, the United States, on getting a ceasefire in relation to the Iran war.
We live in a strange political world at the moment where Andy Burnham can be parachuted into Downing Street in a matter of weeks and where Nigel Farage is facing off against a man dressed as a bin in Clacton. We'll find out next week just how embarrassing that might be for Nigel with under a week to go until the results are counted. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was on the attack on Thursday, perhaps in part to distract from the coverage of her own decision to appoint a former neo-Nazi as an advisor to her Culture and Integration Commission. Reform were in her sights as she accused them of being woke, although that term seems to have shifted its meaning over time.
Reform are a woke party, but when I talk about woke, I talk about people who, it's all grievance, it's victim narratives, it's all moaning and whinging and not proper solutions.
Prime Minister Andy Burnham has been wrestling with the first proper crisis of his tenure in Downing Street. Britain's prison system is dangerously overcrowded and not far from grinding to a halt altogether. So in January, the government passed the Sentencing Act, which would permit the early release of prisoners with fixed sentences. The act excluded dangerous offenders, but families of victims' protests prompted Burnham to pause the scheme for an urgent review. He's decided that prisoners convicted of rape, grooming and serious child sex offences will now also be excluded, but Justice Secretary Alex Norris says that there are other prisoners that they would like to exclude, but simply can't because of the lack of prison space.
Frankly, the Prime Minister's expressed his anger. I would express how angry I am too at being in a situation where we're having to make significant changes that do have real impacts on people's lives so that we are able to have a functioning prison system. And were we not to make these changes, then we would run out of prison places in this October or November.
Victims Commissioner for England and Wales, Claire Waxman, is sympathetic, but was warning that the early release scheme will still cause hurt and anxiety.
I mean, unfortunately, I think he's gone as far as he can go in relation to who can be excluded from that early release due to the prison capacity crisis that we have in this country. And sadly, too many victims will still pay the price.
The prisoner release programme will include up to 5,000 prisoners and is due to begin in October with 10 batches of releases in total. The Prison Governors Association was warning on Tuesday that many details are still unclear, particularly in terms of how prisoners' sentences will be calculated for eligibility. It's estimated that approximately 1,000 prisoners will now be excluded based on the tighter criteria imposed by the government on Tuesday. Sarah, a grooming gang survivor, spoke to Sky News and was pleased that the new PM had listened to their appeals.
Yeah, it feels like a victory and also a bittersweet moment, really. We've campaigned for the last month or so, and the news last night was such a relief. It felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders.
The fact that 2 of the men involved in the death of Police Constable Andrew Harper will still be eligible for early release was not sitting well with the chair of the Thames Valley Police Federation, Aileen O'Connor.
I don't think it's acceptable that on one hand you can say rapists, child sexual offenders should be held, and on the other hand, 2 of Andrew Harper's killers are going to be are able to be released early. That, in my book, is unacceptable.
Last weekend saw US President Trump once again cancel proposed strikes against Iran, suggesting that negotiators had reached the perimeter of a peace deal, but refusing to offer any more detail. The postponement followed last Friday's announcement by Trump's UN rival, the Board of Peace, that a deal was possible between Hamas and Israel in Gaza. The proposed deal would see Hamas disarm, but again details were scarce and Israel appeared to be reluctant to engage. Secretary-General of the actual UN, Antonio Guterres, was urging both sides to engage.
The only good news in recent days is the announcement of an agreement for Hamas to relinquish their weapons and for Israel to withdraw its forces from Gaza. The fighting must stop on all fronts in the region.
It won't delight President Trump that former Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris was back in the spotlight and pointing the finger at him over the deeply unpopular war with Iran.
This war is a war of choice that this president got into with no clear national security issue for us.
Tuesday saw oil prices fall to a 3-week low amidst new hopes that a deal between the US and Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz might be close. Iran, however, said it was engaged in direct negotiations with Oman and not the United States, and that it has no plans to negotiate in the near future. The proposed deal would see 2 new lanes, one beside Oman and one on the Iranian side, which would allow traffic to flow, although the US continues to maintain its own blockade. The price of Brent crude dropped by 5% on Tuesday in anticipation of a deal, and US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent seemed happy to talk up the chances.
President Trump last week threatened what would have been one of the largest military campaigns since World War II. Because of that, we are in talks with the Iranians, and I think there is a chance we may have a deal today or tomorrow.
Apart from the on-again, off-again nature of the Iran war, Donald Trump has been busy. He's been trying to ram through his personal defence attorney, Todd Blanche, as the new Attorney General, doing up monuments across Washington, D.C. and raging over the disaster of the reflecting pool. Trump continues to insist vandals destroyed the pool, while his own Department of the Interior and Washington D.C. AG, former Fox News host Jeanine Pirro, both now accept that the work was botched by the contractor. The president wasn't happy about that, and he's also got his eyes on the profits of the big oil companies as he anticipates an end to the Middle East crisis.
When we're finished with Iran, you're going to see the prices drop through the floor. But they made too much money. Chevron, too much money. ExxonMobil, too much money. They're going to give some of that back to the public.
The clock is ticking down until the US midterm elections, which will see control of the House and potentially the Senate up for grabs. Democrats are ahead on what's known as the generic ballot, but they are struggling internally in a battle between the progressive and traditional wings of the party. It's a terrible time for a crisis, with Donald Trump's poll ratings at an all-time low and Americans growing increasingly frustrated over the price of fuel and the cost of living. Republicans have struggled to defend Donald Trump's approach to the Iran war, but House Speaker Mike Johnson seems to have decided to ignore it entirely.
2025 is like setting the table. So 2026 will be the feast and the banquet in the economy for hardworking Americans. And we did that in our legislation. We put the conditions in place. In the first quarter, the economy was beginning to take off like a rocket, and then we got into this skirmish with Iran.
Last weekend saw Russia and Ukraine exchange blows once again, with a drone and missile strike on Kyiv, killing at least 9 people and injuring more than 30. In return, Ukraine struck 3 more Russian oil refineries and sank a sanctioned Russian container ship in the Black Sea. Ukrainian President Zelensky has been warning that Ukraine is basically out of air defence missiles, but there's no progress in the licensing of Patriot missile systems, with Donald Trump appearing to change his mind about the deal on Friday. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says it's still within Trump's power to end end the war, but it's not clear how.
We're the only country in the world, and President Trump's the only leader in the world, that can bring the Russian side and the Ukrainian side to begin to talk about how you end it. The reality is that dynamics have changed just a little bit in that conflict over the last few months.
Monday saw at least 7 people killed at a beach in southern Russia's Krasnodar region. The strike, which injured as many as 40 other people, appeared to have been caused by a Ukrainian drone losing control. Whether because of Russian jamming or not remains unclear. The incident follows a series of tit-for-tat attacks, which has seen casualties on both sides mount, with Ukrainian long-range strikes also targeting Russian e-commerce retailer Wildberries, which Kyiv says provides components for Russian drones. President Zelensky says Ukraine has no intention of backing down from its combination of attacks and lobbying for more sanctions as they look to end the war.
We cannot predict with certainty when our diplomatic efforts will work, when sanctions will reach the level of pressure that leaves Russia no choice but peace. We will try hard to make it happen, but we understand that Putin hopes to drag out this war.
Ukrainian President Zelensky has been warning allies that his country is dangerously low on crucial interceptor missiles as Russia continues to launch wave after wave of attacks on Ukraine. Early Wednesday morning saw at least 17 people killed in a ballistic missile attack that started fires across Kyiv and injured dozens more. NATO has pledged to urgently get more air defence missiles, but as supplies run low, the situation is becoming increasingly desperate, and Zelensky renewed calls for either more missiles or more sanctions on Russia to stop the bloodshed. He also warned that Ukraine's military has been instructed to find and destroy Russia's missile bases.
The military knows that they need to destroy the enemy's launchers, thus reducing the strikes on Ukraine, our infrastructure and civilians. They are doing this and will continue to do so.
Still to come on today's Standout 7, in association with Metro, Cambridge in the spotlight over plagiarism scandal and tributes to a much-loved comedian. Right after this. Hey, I'm Jamie East, and today's episode of the Smart 7 in association with Metro is supported by our friends at IG. Now, if you're someone who juggles money across multiple accounts, an ISA here, a GIA there, maybe a trading account you set up on the side, you'll know how frustrating managing it all can feel. Well, IG's just launched a brand new app that fixes exactly that. With IG's unified wallet, you can fund across all your accounts from one place, see your total portfolio at a glance, and move between investing, trading and more, all without the hassle of logging into multiple accounts. One app, every product. And on top of that, IG charges no annual fees and zero commission on stock shares and ETFs, so more of your money stays invested rather than being chipped away at by the platform that's supposed to be helping it grow. IG's the investment platform that backs you. Download the app and get started. IG Trade. Invest. Progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply.
Not every sale happens at the register. Before AT&T Business Wireless, checking out customers on our mobile POS systems took too long. Basically a staring contest where everyone loses. It's crazy what people will say during an awkward silence. Now transactions are done before the silence takes hold. That means I can focus on the task at hand and make an extra sale or two. Sometimes I do miss the bonding time. Sometimes.
AT&T Business Wireless. Connecting changes everything.
Welcome back. The University of Cambridge was accused of unleashing grotesque racism on Thursday by its own academics, who are calling for an independent inquiry into the appointment of Jason Arday as Professor of Sociology of Education in 2023. He was only 37 years of age at the time, which is quite young for such a senior position, and his volume of research and publications were described as disappointing by one academic on Thursday. Arday has stepped down after accusations of plagiarism, but his autobiography is due to be published next week. Kehinde Andrews, a former professor of Black Studies at Birmingham City University, rejected the proposition that Professor Arday was treated as some kind of black mascot by Cambridge.
The universities are not looking for black mascots. Universities are not trying to give us a leg up into these places. Cambridge is one of the most notorious institutions for it being difficult. The idea that somehow Jason Arday is this thing that Cambridge can use as a mascot, A, deeply patronising, D, that's frankly a racist idea, and C, just not true.
Green Party leader Zach Polanski was calling for a proper process to get to the bottom of the accusations.
I think the whole affair sounds pretty sad. Again, I think it would be good actually if the investigation still was carried out, because I think it would be good to know the truth. But ultimately, I think these things should be about fair process and transparency rather than trial by media.
The last week saw 7 areas in England and all of Wales declared to be in drought, and the current heat wave is only making matters worse. The Met Office confirmed on Monday that this July was the driest in southern England since records began over 200 years ago, with only 7% of the normal rainfall expected. Dr Ian Higginson is the president of the Royal College of Emergency Physicians, and he says as climate change starts to bite, there are some serious questions for the government about how to protect the NHS.
We've known that climate change has been developing for many years. We also know that the NHS estate is ridiculously under-maintained, and it's really quite old. There are several thousand buildings in the NHS that are older than the NHS itself, for instance, and there's a huge backlog of maintenance.
The extremely dry conditions have seen farmers struggle, with the National Farmers Union warning that Britons could face shortages of certain foods this winter. Tom Bradshaw is the president of the NFU.
If you go back to January and February, we actually had a couple of very wet months. We need to build those reservoirs on farm, and then we can utilise those reservoirs to try to build the resilience of our food system. So we need to adapt, we want to adapt, but we also need the government to recognise that this needs to happen urgently.
With Britain struggling through a summer of heat waves and drought, it wasn't entirely surprising that Green Party leader Zach Polanski held a press conference on Wednesday on the subject of climate change. July has been one of the driest on record, which has left the country bleached and suffering from an epidemic of wildfires. James Rogers is a firefighter, and he joined Zach to give a close-up view of the impact that the change in Britain's climate is having.
Everyone who works in the fire brigade is feeling the exhaustion. We expect the fires. What we didn't expect was for the extreme heat itself to become the emergency.
Polanski says that the situation is so severe that the Prime Minister should call a Cobra meeting to address the issue, and he brushed off questions about his choice of timing after last week's embarrassment over some poor social media posting.
It's very clear why I've called this press conference and why I'm talking about this now. Is from the day I was elected as leader of the Green Party, which was nearly a year ago. Yeah. We saw our poll ratings rise, but actually this isn't about politics. This is about saying to the Prime Minister, this isn't a political reality, it's a scientific reality.
This week saw the death of a TV mobster, a prominent columnist, and a comedian who rose to fame after starting his career as a Butlins redcoat. The weekend saw Sopranos star Vincent Pastore die at age 80. He passed away at home in the Bronx after a long and successful career in which he played many different variations of a tough, wise guy mobster on TV and in movies. He was best known for his role as Salvatore Big Pussy Bonpensiero in the iconic Sopranos, and he won a SAG Award the year 2000 as part of the ensemble cast. He clocked up a huge number of roles, including in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas and Carlito's Way, but also had a role in the animated Shark Tale and appeared in quirky horror Yellow Jackets just last year. Along with that, he hosted the Wise Guys radio show on SiriusXM satellite radio, and he told Variety back in 2018 that he always had a desire to break away from humble beginnings. Rest in peace, Vincent.
We are working class guys. The same drive you had from Marty to do a better life. He wanted what he was going to do. Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. No, I don't want to stay here in Brooklyn and work in a paint store. I want to go be a dancer, you know? And, you know, that's the drive.
Monday saw the death announced of journalist and columnist Rod Liddell, who passed away after a short illness at age 66. He was originally an editor for Radio 4's Today Show, but went on to write columns for The Spectator, The Times and The Sun. CEO of News UK, Rebecca Brooks, described him as an inimitable journalistic force. Monday also saw the death of much-loved Northern Ireland comedian Jimmy Cricket. Cricket, whose real name was James Mulgrew, passed away after a short illness at 80 years of age. An old-school comedian, stand-up and vaudeville-style star, he was hugely popular in the 1980s, winning a Search for a Star competition and then hosting his own TV show. His career started as a Butlins redcoat, but Blackpool always had a special place in his heart. Rest in peace, Jimmy.
I came to be a redcoat at the Metropole Hotel on my day off. I would go to all these shows. You know, I was a punter. This is wonderful, you know, to be part of that. And I managed, when I did get a break, to do pantomime with both Harry Worth and Cilla Black on the same bill. So, you know, dreams can come true.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world. Hey, I'm Jamie East, and today's episode of The Smart 7 in association with Metro is supported by our friends at IG. Now, if you're someone who juggles money across multiple accounts, An ISA here, a GIA there, maybe a trading account you set up on the side. You'll know how frustrating managing it all can feel. Well, IG's just launched a brand new app that fixes exactly that. With IG's unified wallet, you can fund across all your accounts from one place, see your total portfolio at a glance, and move between investing, trading, and more, all without the hassle of logging into multiple accounts. One app, every product. And on top of that, IG charges no annual fees and zero commission on stock, shares and ETFs, so more of your money stays invested rather than being chipped away at by the platform that's supposed to be helping it grow. IG's the investment platform that backs you. Download the app and get started. IG Trade. Invest. Progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply.
Quick question. When was the last time a display ad changed your mind? Now think about the last time a friend told you about something they loved. Different feeling, right? That's how podcast advertising works. A host who's built real trust with their audience talks about your brand in their own words, in their own voice. It doesn't interrupt the experience. It's part of it. With Acast, you can access the world's largest podcast marketplace. Choose the right shows, the right audiences, the right format. Then watch the data tell you it worked. You're not buying impressions. You're buying influence. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.